How difficult is it to relate to a character who has this incredibly appealing accent and is irresistible to women?
Uh, I just had a laugh from the other room. That's a good question. It wasn't a difficult role to connect with, but you know what's interesting is that's great, and on the surface it's very appealing and it's exciting, but that's the whole point of this movie is when you've had that your whole life, you got to finally go for something a little deeper. You know, what is life really about? Is it just about that? And that's what George is trying to do here. He's like, you know what? This time, maybe not. Although he's not doing a very good job at doing that. But that's what that's what the arc is, and him being put in these ridiculous situations as these women try to get their claws into him.
Well, how important is it for you to like really identify with a character when you sort of step into it? Is it more important for you to sort of transform yourself, find something that's further away from you, or do you prefer one over the other?
I've done it all, you know. I've played Leonidas, you know, or the Phantom, and you know, or crazy killers, and you have to go a far way. Or this that I'd say, yeah, I mean, I probably have quite a lot in common with George, and but I remember the first couple of roles that when I started acting that I actually felt were I did better at were roles that were far away from me. And it was more challenging to learn to play me or a slightly different version of me. Now I find it a lot easier because I'm more comfortable. But I remember the first time I had to play somebody like me, and I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't really know how to be just me on screen. But I think that George reminds me a little too much of me.
Well, this feels almost like a 40-year-old coming of age story. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you know, like we think about, you know, teenagers having that experience, but it really does feel like sort of the beginning of this movie. He's sort of discovering a lot of things that people maybe should have learned a couple of decades ago.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's again, you know, we talk about how, well, you know, a guy that has everything or has women all over him, and how that's on the surface it's appealing. But there's one of the downsides. George always had everything. You know, he had money, he had adulation, he had this success. And sometimes that's not the best thing for a person, because when that happens, it's harder to stop and try and understand or search for the deeper parts of life and the more spiritual or emotional parts. So you kind of get caught up in the, oh, I'll take that, I'll take her, I'll enjoy all this. And I think that your maturity, you know, your childhood lasts longer. It takes a little while longer to mature, and that's kind of beautiful to watch as well, because you see he is trying. And sometimes when you try but you've lived your life a certain way, you just give out that energy. You give out that energy of kind of success, of sexiness, of flirtiness, even if you're not really trying, and they still keep coming. So it's not always about making the decision. It's about making the decision and then having to deal with everything that it's going to throw at you.
Sure, sure. Well, how much do you feel like you've gone through that? Whether it's that sort of search for a deeper level of spirituality, or even in the case sort of the story, he's sort of trying to make a change to, you know, sort of a different area of a different kind of challenge.
Yeah, I've gone through a lot of those in my own life. You know, I've changed careers completely. I went through law school, trained as a lawyer, then suddenly I was an actor. I've had to deal with a lot of issues in my life that I've come through, and you know, and like you say, deeper kind of spiritual searches, and then, you know, in relationships. But we all have.
Sure.
I think that's what's great about this movie is these situations are, you completely relate. It's a very universal idea, and it doesn't just have to be about George, because you also would relate with Jessica's character, who's this protective mother, but she's hurt, but she was in love, or all these women as well, and what they would do to get what they want. We understand that longing that you have, and what do you do to get something you want? Are you willing to kind of bend the rules a bit? So I think you kind of you identify with these situations, and also you appreciate how funny they are, as does George, by the way. I think George goes through this and can see the sadness and what's going on with him. He's willing to be able to comment on that, and also just his reaction. He's almost like the audience in a way, as he watches these people come at him and he's like, what is going on here? These people are insane.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.